Hi everyone, my name is Daria. I'm the co-founder of Superdot, Visualizing Complexity. We are doing since 10 years data visualization and information design. And I'm welcoming you to our new 19th edition of On Data and Design. This time together co-hosted with Matthias, who is the vice head of, yes, here he is, the vice head of the Statistical Office of the Canton of Zurich. We have the topic tonight, we chose together the topic tonight of open data design. So means open data in intersection with design. We will have 3 talks. We have Diana here joining us from Berlin. We have Matteo joining us from Bolzano, and Matthias will also have a talk. We will ask you to participate by asking us questions during the talks. You can post them to Slido, and after the 3 talks, we will look at the questions and try to answer them in the group. We see Matthias improvising. The reason why he's doing that is because we are today doing a hybrid edition, which means that Matthias is actually next door with an audience who is physically participating here in Basel, and we are actually all streamed at the projection. So we have this kind of mix today. I would say we could already start with our first talk, and I would just invite Diana to introduce herself and to give us some nice insights about your projects. Diana.
Thank you very much, Darian. And yeah, thank you, Matthias and Darian, for actually organizing this amazing event. I'm very happy to be here. And yes, I'm going to talk about open data and the potential and challenges to bring open data to rural regions in Germany. And I'm just going to quickly, I hope my internet connection is now stable, share my screen here. Just let me know if you see it, because sometimes this doesn't really work.
Yes, it works.
Oh, wonderful. It loads a bit. So yes, my talk is called From La La Land to Open Data Land, how to bring open data to rural regions and what's at stake if it doesn't. So I work for Neuland 21. I lead the open government program there. And we focus, in our work, we focus mainly on digital and social innovation for better quality of living in rural areas. And that includes best practice mapping, trend mapping, innovation research, concept and project development, education for regional stakeholders. We are a non-profit organization. We were founded in 2017. We work Germany-wide and for model projects mainly in the Eastern German federal states and structurally more weak regions in the Western federal states. Just kind of, we have just, yeah, you can see the map. We have just opened an office in Bad Belzig-Brandenburg, which is about 90k southwest of Berlin, and maybe 1 hour drive by car from Potsdam, the federal capital of Brandenburg. Currently, we have like a train strike, so it's all a bit longer these days. Neuland 21 is also focusing on topics like new concepts of living in the countryside. How do we work in the future? Economy, education, innovative administration, local supply chains, but also mobility. And the government, the open government team that I lead, and I'm not really sure if you are familiar with open government, it means how to make the administration and the government more transparent and more democratic. And we currently work on 2 projects. One is an open government project that implement these often very abstract ideas of open government on the local level. We work around digital participation, citizen-generated data, and the attempt to foster an open data culture in Bad Belzig. And the other one is the project that I'm going to talk about. It's called Open Data for Rural Regions, Opportunities, Challenges, and the Legal Economic Design. Short version is Open Data Land, and it's funded by the Federal Ministry of Agriculture here in Germany. Before I dive in describing our goals or research questions and first findings, I just want to talk about two examples I came across recently to give you an idea why we are actually thinking of bringing open data to the countryside. These are typical situations that you probably came across as well. So there is no surprise here. The first one is infrastructure planning in the countryside. What you see on the left-hand side is what I think was once a healthy and well-structured cycling path in the local district where I'm from, in the southwest of Germany. I was cycling there once, and all of a sudden these pollards were there. And I couldn't really figure out why they were there, because other than please dismount your bicycle, there were no clues, or there was no explanation why all of a sudden out of the blue these pollards were there. And also these two pollards in the middle, they made the situation a bit more dangerous, because there's a slight corner to the left, so it narrows the cycling path. You have to maneuver, and the other people that approach you, they don't really know what they await just around the corner. So I was just curious, because these just seem so randomly put there, and I couldn't really find a heat map based on open data, on accident statistics. All I found was a very meek and not very insightful article on why these were put there. And they're still there, actually. The reason was there were always erosions at this kind of stretch of the cycling path. And there was a construction site, and to safeguard cyclists, they just put up these pollards there. But I could never really figure out what it really was that would actually safeguard people from a landslide here. And it just made the whole situation a bit more dangerous than it actually is. The second picture shows a shooting range outside of Bad Belzig. It's situated at the kind of edge of the city, but it's still close enough to kind of cause friction between residents and the owner of this shooting range. And there have been noise complaints for so many years now. The residents say it's too loud. The owner says, no, it's all within the allowed noise range. And then someone from the local district shows up just to measure the noise over a very overseeable period of time. Also, this person always shows up announced, so the owner knows what to do or not to do. But what we don't have is like a solid database that informs or creates an informed discussion of whether this shooting range should be maybe moved more towards the north, which has been discussed for a very long time. And this is a typical talk of the town topic that turns into one of these more toxic identification topics for citizens. And it seems to never end. And of course, it would be very easy just to install noise sensors for a longer period of time to enable an informed discussion. But this is currently not happening. And this is going to be, continue to be a bitter discussion between owner and local authorities and the residents. So when we started our research, we quickly realized that there is already a what seems to be like a urban-rural gap when it comes to open data. Only 5 of the rural districts in Germany have an open data website in comparison to the 43 of the bigger cities. And no one really knows what the countryside needs. The scientific debate is limited right now to urban examples, and these findings cannot necessarily be transferred into rural areas. So we all agree, most of us, that open data is an important field for any municipality, but municipalities in the rural areas of Germany are threatened to lose out on topics of digitalization or innovation, or even taking good care of their citizens. And yeah, that's a huge problem. So we have 3 research questions for the project. And one which is the unofficial one, and which we don't quantify right now. The first one is potential. What's the potential of open data to benefit living conditions in rural areas? The second one, what are the particular challenges with regard to actually implementing what we call a open data culture, meaning not only open up data, but also foster a lively community around it. And what are the ideal legal pricing and organizational frameworks for these rural municipalities to actually open up data? We also have a 4th one, which I'm going to talk about later. What's at stake if open data doesn't become a tale of the countryside? And so far, it's only a success story of the cities. And but yeah, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. But before we can actually answer these questions, we needed to have a closer look of what is actually there when it comes to open data in the countryside, in these rural areas we are talking about. Do we just have a gut feeling, or is there any open data activity that we have overlooked or has been overlooked by the conventional or the already known research that has been done? So we started this research project last year in April 2020, and we set out to really scrutinize Germany, actually. And we started from the bottom, from a federal level down to a federal state level, to a local level. We kind of looked into into every local district there is, if there is any open data activity, or at least data activity. And what we found is, well, you can be hopeful about it, but you don't have to be like, well, there is hope. Let's put it like that. We only found 69 open data portals, and of those 69 open data portals in these rural regions, many of them were just digital ruins, just a few data sets, sometimes on a local website. It was no longer updated data. So we found like very heartwarming examples of, for example, this one guy who is a wine grower had taken an interest in open data and just opened up some municipal data sets himself. But that was a hobby and he couldn't really sustain it for long. So he went back to wine growing, I guess. But with the 96 geodata portals we found, this is a good sign, because geodata is always a trailblazer for open data. And it's a good sign because there is data infrastructure, there's data knowledge, there's data skill. And the people who work with geodata, they're not afraid of actually then also maybe turn to open data portals. So yeah, there are more geodata portals, and many open data portals are one-off actions. And we also didn't find an open data community. We couldn't identify or find one, and that is a huge problem if you really want to make open data access. Doesn't really matter where. And that's what cities had the advantage of having universities, of having digital agencies like superdot. So you actually create like walk-ins for engaging with open data. The demand is much higher, and that is of course not really happening in the countryside. People are just not really interested in engaging with data. When we talked to experts, we identified some best practice portals. The reason why open data hadn't taken the countryside yet, these reasons are not very different from the stories we hear from the cities. It's like lack of human resources, digital skills, and lack of data imagination in the specialized offices. There's a lack of knowledge about user groups, assumed needs, and no organizational process. And I would also add, we currently in Germany, we have a patchwork of a legal framework. So there are many uncertainties within local communities on under which legal framework actually to open up data. And that, of course, leads people to refrain actually to do it at all. No one wants to, kind of have a legal dispute over that. And with these challenges, we've identified, of course, there are so many solutions like change management, best practice sharing, target group segmentation. It all sounds very great when you kind of read it, but of course, those of you who have worked with open data, it's not that simple, just kind of to break the bottleneck. So every time I talk to open data experts in more like in a dialogue workshop or anything, it almost feels like you're being in a hurt locker, or it's a group therapy, because there's so much frustration sometimes, a lot of hurt, and over analyzing the situations, and everyone has written down something that could be the next big thing that brings open data solution to every corner of the country. If you present these solutions, you just sometimes just get a pitiful look, because they have been doing that. And I thought for this talk, maybe I just don't end my presentation with these are the solutions for you, but maybe try to find different action modes, maybe also something as a take-home action plan for some of you out there. And these are take-home action points. So what can you do? Because there's a lot of at stake if open data doesn't reach the countryside. For example, digital conservatism instead of digital innovation, or that current crisis situations are just being managed the way they have been managed over the last 30 years by gut feeling and bad and data-deprived decision-making. And we have just seen it this year. I mean, faxing COVID stats to the Robert Koch Institute is no longer working, and not really using data that has already been collected to make better infrastructure planning is no longer working. And the municipalities are the first one that have to face the immense changes like climate change, catastrophe. These are no longer the topics of the future, they're already happening today. So if we consider open data as a right of the citizens, I suggest just call your local MP, just inquire, hey, what's your stand on open data, pros and cons? Oh, you don't know what open data is? Why don't you check out this incredible website from Neuland 21? They have done some amazing work there, I think. And or even better, have a call, lobby for open data in your local community. The second one is talk possibility, not data. I have the feeling that many people are overwhelmed when they hear about open data for the first time, because they are being confronted with metadata and standards and this and that, and the data sucks and I can't download it, etc. But I think we have a lot of designers among the audience as well. We should talk possibility more. We should find creative ways to actually make the benefit of open data more visible. For example, you never really find open data on Instagram. And I think it should really also reach Instagram as like campaigns that promote the benefits of open data. Yeah, just wonderful pictures of good infrastructure, best practices, where you can really see happened or powered with open data, or worst case scenario pictures of bad infrastructure, and then you just say wouldn't have happened with open data, because I think that's what people really need. They need to have a tangible approach of what the possibilities are and not just data. The third one is don't make open data bigger than it is. I always have the feeling that open data is used with these big analogies. It's like the new oil, the new gold, the new whatever. And it's, you know, water, which is going to dry up soon, which is the scary part. And there's always also a bit of a mystery around open data, which is weird. But open data is just content, and we should treat it like content as well. I think I've never met anyone who is afraid of the content of a well-maintained website of a local administration. And the same goes for open data. You shouldn't really, I think it's very important to demystify open data, because it's not rocket science. And we have the standards, we have the infrastructure, yeah, and we have the experts. I mean, we are 10 years into the discussion, and so much has happened. And this also needs to be happening in the countryside. And the fourth one is start your own initiative. If you are of the opinion that there is not enough open data out there, which there isn't, there are so many creative ways to actually engage and make this topic more, yeah, just raise the, how do you say, the attention of the people, and really make it clear that it's important that they actually have open data, like open an OK Lab, do a open air exhibition, yeah, and just get people together in your local community to actually talk about open data, like hands-on. And for fifth but not least, we currently look, and this goes out to the German-speaking audience, who have, one of two of you have a academic background or research background. We are currently looking for support for this project. So if you're interested for doing paid work when it comes to open data, please ping me. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thanks again for organizing this, and looking forward what Matteo and Matthias have to say.
Thank you, Diana. The good part is I see there are actually a lot of questions already. For those who didn't ask questions, in YouTube live stream below, there is a link for Slido. You can go there and just ask the questions to Diana. We will discuss it afterwards. So thanks, Diana. Matteo, you're next.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me, first of all. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Can you see the slides? Okay. So today I would like to speak how to design digital commons that it happened exactly after what Diana explained very well. So they focus on collecting and generating open data. And in this case, we work with open data, turning them into something that it's a disposal for the community, a broader community, as Diana explained it very well, not only the expert, but hopefully a broader audience of citizens and concerned citizens. But yes, first of all, let me introduce briefly. My name is Matteo. I'm a designer and founding partner of Sheldon Studio. We work on the intersection of data journalism, information design, and social design. And we used to say that we design informative experiences. Let me very briefly explain what we mean with it. So on one side, we have information that by definition, it's something that we read, we listen to in case of podcast, or we watch. It's something that is indirect, it's produced by other people. On the other side, instead, we have experience, which is direct because we live with our body through our senses. So our aim is to reduce the distance between information and experience. So designing projects that in a way let the readers experience the information. This is what we mean. So exactly, the final aim obviously is to enable a broader audience also to understand that social and political issues are complex issues, because things are more complex than they are advertised, starting from, for instance, the climate change or nowadays the COVID vaccines. So everything is more complex. It's impossible to explain the complexity, especially with the website, but letting at least people perceive that things are complex, are not just black and white, would be in our dream, would be our dream. Exactly. So what is designing digital common? First of all, I ask in other 30 seconds of patience, I would introduce what is a common, first of all. So the concept of commons originates in the 70th centuries in the UK to refer to those fields shared by the landowners and the local communities. The latters have the right to use the lands, but also to take care of them. Nowadays, the commons are more alive than ever if you think to the several urban gardens that populates our European cities. These are green areas given to the citizens, which through the practice of taking care of them, the so-called commoning, support the fostering of new relations on the district, increase the awareness on green issues, and improve the air quality of the cities, for instance. Well, what are the digital commons? Are very common in reality. Wikipedia, OpenStreetMap, the Internet Archive, open software, and open data are examples of digital commons. Exactly as the traditional commons, they are at disposal by the citizenship. And at the same time, citizenship can or have to take care of them. But in which way? The digital commons care practices involve the maintenance of open data, forms of creative reuse, education about open data, and engagement, obviously, of a broader audience. As Diana said, designers obviously may have a crucial role in designing and taking care of digital commons, especially in case of open data. If you think of the growing amount of open data released by institutions, open data has a strong potential that risks not to be fully released if the audience is not able to deal with it. Indeed, open data needs specific skills to be managed sometimes. Diana said sometimes open data are simpler than they are imagined, but in other cases could turn in something pretty painful for non-expert users. So designers may have a role in this, as I say, designing interfaces or platforms that open again, or better, open fartherly the open data to an unexperienced audience, and moreover, raise their graphicacy level toward a stronger awareness on specific phenomenon and obviously on open data itself. Graphicacy is the graphical literacy, so the skills to deal with graphical statistics, so charts and information when turned into something visual. And yes, at Sheldon, we explore every day how to turn open data into digital common. To show that, I brought 3 cases just to show the approach we relied on. Each of the project I am going to show you will need a single tool to be explained. So now I'm obviously moving forward, and in case there's space later for questions. The first project is called Local Climate Change. This is the URL. And we made visible the European Copernicus dataset. That is a big dataset because it's based on tons of daily temperatures of the whole European territory, starting from the 1961. You can imagine the amount of data, more than 100,000 cities temperature every day for 40 years. In a small peek, you can see one of the traditional dataviz about climate, clustered data with colored regions that obviously indicate something, but it's very different, for instance, from this kind of visualization. We relied on this dataset granularity to foster a stronger connection between citizens and their data, because in the end, it's data about you, about the city you live, the city where you spent your holidays or where you studied. So we try to connect readers with their places, especially the one they care. So for this reason, we designed a scattered dot map that features more than 100 dots, one for each European municipality. Obviously, the color relates to the increase of temperature in the last 40 years. And then, okay, this is a screencast from the project. Visitors can explore the map and find their places they care. And once the visitor spotted a place, a new page opens. Okay, now let's wait. I'm searching for Zermatt. Then a new page opens, and it is based on a data storytelling approach, where the scrolls activity supports readers in focusing on the chart and what the chart says. For instance, in this case, the chart now is stuck in the center of the screen, and through scrolling, readers can understand better what the chart says. Then the narration zooms a little bit out and tells the story from the specific place to the surroundings, the province, and then the regions. Finally, we thought it would be good giving chance to those concerned readers to share the data and the climate that affects their places. So we generated 100,000 data thumbnails, so this rectangle in red, ready to be shared on social networks. Then it was impossible to monitor all the spread of this thumbnail on Facebook due to the API privacy restriction that the social network made. But we observed that many people share it among their groups, like district group or major of small towns, etc., etc., with the idea to raise awareness among their digital social bubbles. Then the second case is called Mapping Diversity. We published a few weeks ago, and it's still in progress. Through this project, we continue to explore the same approach you've seen before, but apply to another topic, the diversity in the Italian city street names. As I said, the project is just a pilot of a longer process where we plan to collect more kind of diversity and gaps which occur in our city street names, such as the racial, the social, the political gap. In this case, the first chapter is about the gender. Unfortunately, in Italy, not all the cities have open data about street names. For this reason, we, in partnership with the European Data Journalism Network, work on an algorithm that connects the OpenStreetMaps open data with the Wikipedia data to extract a pretty accurate data set on street names. Then, again, the project relies on a data storytelling narration to enable a broader audience to understand the issue, first of all, but also the visualization. And this is the main page. Let me start it, okay. Which introduced the whole topic. And then, so sorry, after the first introduction, in this case, is a simple chart that it's again stuck in the screen. And as soon as the reader scroll, a series of text are explaining what the chart is displaying. So before there was all the street dedicated to people, then the first selection was the one dedicated only to women, and then only to women that are no saints, because in Italy we have a big tradition of saints like Maria. Many streets are dedicated to Maria, and so the data about women are still less if you exclude this kind of people. Then this is again the introduction, where every chart is in a way explained, and this is the whole list of the people where Italian streets are dedicated. In red, the women. We were inspired by the Veteran Memorial in Washington, so with this big, huge visualization of names. And finally, the most interesting part for today, where basically we relied on the same idea, a simple map which step by step reveals and visualizes the female screen names. So in the beginning, these are the streets of Bolzano that are dedicated to people. Then the first, it's dedicated to men. Then to women, just 26. Again, women that are not saints. And finally, we try to exploit the same approach. So suggesting to share the data about the city with this informative thumbnail. And finally, readers are free to explore and to read about the story of who are or were those women. Then the last project, it's very different. It's about the open data portal we designed for Matera, that was the European capital of culture in 2019. Matera is an Italian city in the deep south of Italy. After 1 year of being European capital of culture, the City of Matera Foundation asked us to make sense of all the data they collected and generating during that year. And they asked us to design an open data portal. So we thought to move a little bit beyond, beyond traditional open data. This one is the European open data portal, that are mainly functional and devoted to experts. Basically, it's a long list of data sets sorted by categories, with the aim to give back data to the people. This was the main idea we had. So many of the data indeed was about what people listened, consumed, visited, enjoyed during the Matera year. So we would like to give back data to the people that contributed in the same data generation, and also obviously to the international community. So we relied on a lot of interviews the foundation did during that year, so the classical qualitative data, and identified 3 kinds of potential users for our open data portal. And now I share a very fast view of the whole platform, and then I just go in deep in a single section. Okay. Instead that just a list of data set, we designed a 7 thematic section that show what Matera Open Data can do, suggesting ideas for possible creative reuse, and then leading only in the end of the reading process to the open data. With the idea to offer several entry points to each audience category. So the citizen, the data lover, and the nerd, the data expert. Because we thought the open data are just the last part of a wider process that aim to, again, empower citizens, especially the ones that are non-expert. For instance, this is a screencast from the section about cultural open data. Okay, it's moving, yes. The page narrate and visualize the data, and only in the end is closed by an open data corner that you will see at the end. And this open data corner just share the data the readers watched in this page. And especially the data are already cleaned and filtered, ready to be visualized. We created this section especially for non-expert. Obviously, it's people that has a concern that would like to start. It's not the average citizen, but with this data set are very small, very easy, just drag and drop, for instance, in one of the many platforms that visualize data, and the charts are ready. This is the closing section. And then obviously we relied on very simple data visualization that are visually accessible to a broader audience. For instance, this is a very super simple stacked bar. Now it's just a screenshot, but if you visit the platform, it's interactive, so it allows also to read the small section because it's enlarged. Or we try to better integrate dataviz and the story, the text, like especially in this case, we thought integrating the legend in the text, relying on the idea that average visitors are attracted probably by the color and the shapes. So once they want to discover what the blue or the pink relates to, they realize that the legend is in the text. So in a way, they are not forced, but motivated to read a little bit of context. And finally, there's a specific section that is called Open Data Center this time, that is devoted for the data lover and the data expert, and contains all the data set, which is very similar to a traditional open data portal. So to wrap up, I show you what we try to do, so that we try to open the open data to a broader audience, turning them into a real digital commons, with the idea to foster a stronger awareness of specific topics and also on open data issues as well. How we try to do that? We connect local and global to shorten the distance between citizens and their data. We rely on interdisciplinary and collaborative approach, which provides many and different entry points to the same phenomenon. And also this allowed to speak to different audiences through the same design project, returning as many facets as possible of the same story. I didn't explain so much this issue, but we love to combine quantitative and qualitative data whereas possible, especially on social issues, because we are in the end talking about people. That yes, it's number, but behind number there are people. And then we try to design toward empowering readers' graphicacy and to enable a broader audience to approach contemporary society's complexity. And finally, we struggle and to reflect on the political and social implication that our design project features. It's always a mess because you expect that you reflected on everything and then shit happens every time, but at least being aware that there are social and political implications in design, it's very important, because in the end we try to make internet a better place. So just as a take-home message, I love this statement from Clay Johnson. He wrote a book about information diet, and I found very nice. So the internet is the single biggest creator of ignorance mankind has ever created, as well as the single biggest eliminator of that ignorance. So it's up to us populating internet with good contents. So thank you. And now the stage is for Matthias.
Thank you, Matteo. Cool. As I see, it just time to facilitate. I see there are already 17 questions. So, and I see people started voting. So also you can use Slido to vote on questions, because we won't be able to answer 17 questions. Matthias, it's you.
Sorry, I had to turn off the camera. I was listening. Really impressive talks from you both. Yeah, I'm really honored. You hear me? You should hear me.
Yes.
Yeah. We had a little bit of bad connection, so I had to stop the video. I will share my screen now. Just a second. Here we are. Oh, you're in the way. Switch to full screen, and we can start. So, user-centered data design. I am like from the public administration, so I am the one that is providing the data Diana and Matteo use in their daily work. And we have a kind of a luxury problem in Switzerland, because open by default, so it's mandatory for all federal agencies in Switzerland. This means that data must be published as open data as long as the data is not protected by law. For example, like individual personal data, like your tax records or something like this. But unfortunately, the published data usually looks like this playground, built with the best intentions, but not open, not accessible, not usable, and above all, not playable. Many times these barriers are unnecessary or from a long ago time where things were analog. And the laws, they take a lot of time to change, and this takes in Switzerland like 5 years to change a law or even more. One example for the latter is that open data license, non-commercial, allowed commercial with permission reference required. So if you want to use the data for a commercial platform, you have to ask for permission. And almost half of the data sets on Open Data Swiss have this license on the Swiss Open Data platform. And the problem is when Darian wants to use this data, he has to ask if he's allowed to use it for a commercial use. And he pays double for this data. He pays with the taxes because the public administration has to process this demand. And he pays with his time as well. And for data journalists or people like Matteo, this is really a bad thing because it takes a lot of time and they have to ask and they do such a great work. So we should make it as simple as possible for them. As I said, I am sure the decision for this license was made with the best intentions. So what went wrong then? And I think it's a little bit like in the movie Arrival. Often the problem is lack of mutual understanding. So just a translation problem. Like in the movie Arrival, it has, by the way, some great dataviz in the movie. And people don't talk to each other. And if they talk to each other, they don't understand each other. And this is why Diana's and Matteo's work and the work of you all here in the audience as intermediaries is so important. And that's why I'm here and why I'm talking to you. I like it and there's beer afterwards, but this is the actual reason. To make it easier for Diana and Matteo and you all, the public administration has to become 21st century public servants and engage with their customers and users. So they have to engage with the people. And we need to make it easy for you and for ourselves to play with data because we love to play and we need to be creative with data and make it easy to be creative with data. We need to democratize the use and the understanding of data. Like the Roland TR-808 revolutionized the music production, we can discuss the quality of the music that was created. Sure, not everything was great, but the democratization alone of data and music opens a huge potential for data use and for creativity and for civic engagement and so on. What potential? How and why user-centered data design? I try to answer this in the next slides. Why user-centered data design? I copied this from the CARE principle for indigenous data governance. However, the core values are transferable to data governance in general. So we have CARE, collective benefit, use data for inclusive development and innovation, use data to foster citizen engagement and improve governance. So use data for collective benefit. Then authority to control, recognizing rights and interests of the public. The public has rights and interests in the collected data by the administration, and also in the use of the data. So it is data for governance of the public administration, but also governance of data. And then responsibility. Those working with data have a responsibility to share the data and the outcomes generated with it publicly, I think. The data should be used for positive relationships and for expanding, as Matteo said as well, capacity, data literacy, graphical capacity, and so on. And people's rights and well-being should be the primary concern. This is the ethics. For minimizing harm and maximizing benefit, and for justice in general, and for future use. A good way to know if your data, oh, I missed the slide, how to design data user-friendly. It has to be fair. So it has to be findable. The first step in reusing data, and I'm sure Diana and Matteo both can tell a lot of stories about finding data. The first step for reusing data is to find them. Metadata and data should be easy to find for both humans and computers. It should be machine readable metadata. And this is essential for automatic discovery of data sets and services. And it should be accessible. Once the user finds the required data, she, he, or they need to know how they can be accessed, possibly including authentication and authorization. And it should be interoperable. The data usually need to be integrated with other data. In addition, the data need to interoperate with applications or workflows for analysis, storage, processing, and publishing. And it needs to be reusable. The ultimate goal of these FAIR principles is to optimize the reuse of data. To achieve this, metadata and data should be well described so that they can be replicated and or combined in different settings. A good way to know if your data is fair, use your own data as public administration and do the hard work for the users. This is an example of our Statistical Office of the Canton of Zurich where I'm vice head, and yeah, it's bad because the data is separated in semicolons, and this is like a Swiss speciality to separate comma-separated value data sets with semicolon. So if I want to use as a designer or a data journalist this data, I will lose 1 hour just to program a new parser, find out that the problem is the semicolon, restructure the data. Maybe it's not UTF-8 encoded. I have another problem. I wasted 2 hours before I can start to program my data visualization and publish it in the newspapers. Like this, I can't work. So what can we do? We have a lot of data portals in Switzerland, and we need to use our own data for publications in the public administration. And examples of open data portals are here: Open Data Swiss, Open Data Basel Stadt has a really nice portal, then the Canton of Zurich, the Canton of Thurgau as well, the City of Zurich. There are many open data portals, but a lot of you, that's what Darian told me, haven't even heard about them. So we use open data portals ourselves, and we make the code fair too. So we make the code findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable too. How to do that? I have made here a little example. Open Data Basel Stadt has a really nice portal. You can find a lot of nice data sets. They have tables to every data set. For example, we have here the parking lots from the publicly available Parkhäuser. I don't know the English word in Basel. And it has tables to it. It has maps. It has analysis. And you can even embed the graphics as an iframe on your website. And it even has an API. So when I use the data, and it's done here, it's like minutely, every minute it is, there is new data. So it's really real time. If I use the data, I publish the code that I use open as well. So people like Matteo and Diana can use the code, and I pretend to be a designer now and make the map a little bit nicer with the nice Damon watercolor background. So you can, I made it really easy, just copy paste at the right place. You can adjust and make it your own. Let's see if it works. Yeah. So now I have my own data, my own visualization. And that's because the code is open too. That's what Matteo as well said, now open data, open code, open commons, create digital commons for everybody. And then you can start to have fun with the data. I'm here, wrong place, sorry. it has the different direction on the scroll bar, so I have to rethink every time. And then you can start to have fun with the data really quickly. And again, I pretend to be a designer. This is an open data set from the Canton of Zurich, and maybe some of you recognize this is the Lake of Zurich, and it looks really bad. This is because a statistician made the map. And if I publish the code publicly, and somebody can start and redo it really quickly and like make the stroke width a little bit smaller and see how it looks, put a nice background in it. Unexpected token. We have a semicolon again. So already a little bit nicer, and we can start to have fun. Maybe we animate everything. We should take a little bit less data because it's a lot of data. We rename this one. Just a second. We are a little bit closer. We can start to animate maybe something. See how this looks. And if the data is really accessible, people start to be creative with the data and start to animate things, and maybe something really new and nice and reusable starts to appear in it. And to foster this, we have to be fair so that all of you can care. And how to do that? We need to listen to the users of our data. We need to engage with the public. And first, we need to design the data. And then lots of people will try to design the information. But as public administration, I'm sure we need to first design the data, and then we can invest in designing the information. And we need to use our own data that is publicly available. And thanks for your attention. And I give back to Daria.
Super. Thanks a lot. Does it work with the sound, Matthias? If we do the discussion? Good. Cool. So first we have to design the data. Sounds interesting point. Cool. I would be now really kind of democratic here and start with the questions we had from the audience. There are 25 questions. We never had 25 questions so far. So this is a record of participation. So I will start with the first one, which is directed to Diana. Diana, the first question is, did you ask what questions people in rural areas would like to be answered with open data? What data would they like to have for a better life?
No, this isn't really part of our research. We don't really engage with the public. We engage more with open data stakeholders. Personally, I think asking what data do you need is not really leading anywhere, because like common people, well, I don't want to call them common people, but people who are not data experts, they usually don't come up with, I want to have this data and that data because that helps me. They come up with needs, but we don't approach them usually with data. And I also don't really believe anymore that data by demand is really working. And I know that in Switzerland there is data by default, mandatory by law. But yeah, I am a strong believer of purposefully publishing data these days, and that I think happens, between because of a good conversation with the local administration and intermediaries. And that's, we don't leave citizens out, but to ask the open question, what data do you need? That never really leads anywhere, because there's not a real data awareness among citizens yet. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, Would you, Matthias, it goes also in your direction. Would you agree? Or Matteo, maybe also from your practice?
Just briefly, I agree with Diana, because especially if you ask for data, but sometimes there is instead a concern. As Diana showed before, I remember the name of the town where people shoot, and the citizens were concerned about the sound. So probably if you ask which data, they are not able to answer, but probably what is the things that make you worry every day, it's the sound. Okay, maybe we could sample this, but obviously it's a very long process of intermediation and conversation with local communities. And so probably it's better, as Diana said, so just sampling the sound and making it available to the people. But yes, the concern, it's very important. For instance, in the project we made about the gender gap, we were really surprised about the resonance it had on the Italian media compared to the climate change. Obviously, there's not one topic that is more important than the other. Both are important as well. But personally, I'm more concerned with the climate change. But in the end, in the current debate in the Italian media, the gender gap, it's a very strong topic. And once you channel this concern, maybe other people can understand, okay, these are data about gender gap. This could be useful. And yes, if you are able, as a designer, obviously not as an institution, but maybe it could help also some institution to understand what are the social controversy or the concern of a specific community. Probably this will help also to gather people and letting people be attracted to learn a little bit more about data.
As I see, Matthias is already in the sunset, enjoying the sunset on the other side. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, Diana, you're totally right about purposeful data, but the example of Matteo is maybe a little bit an example against it as well, because who would ever have thought about publishing street names and then use it to visualize the gender gap? So the creativity of the data comes with a lot of data, and maybe you don't have a purpose for this data yet. Like in the pandemic, we never thought we used the data from the Verkehrszählung, the traffic counting, to visualize that people stay at home because it's a lockdown. And this is maybe a little bit an argument against it when I have to argue in the Canton of Zurich for open by default. I use these examples, and I have to argue for open by default because for us it makes it much more, much easier. Because if we have to discuss every data set with the data owner why it should be open, it's like, yeah, you said it in the beginning, Diana, it's frustrating.
That's a very good point, Matthias. I think on a federal level, open by default is totally justified because these are like ministries and they have the resources. When we talk to the local administrations, there is always this topic of, this topic of the resources. So, and then what to publish with the very scarce resources there are. And I think open by default has led to then already, I think there are 3 waves currently. I read a very interesting tweet on that. And the 3rd wave is this purposeful publication of data, which is of course based by the open by default experience we have, because so much came out of it too.
Cool, thanks. I would just hand on, because I'm a little bit the timekeeper, I would go to the next question, which again was directed to Diana, but I think it's again a question which is interesting for all of you. It says, Diana, you said people are not really interested in engaging with open data. That's a citation, quote Diana. The question is, why is that so? Why do you think? Why do you have that pessimistic point of view?
Oh gosh, it's not pessimistic, it's realistic.
Okay.
I mean, maybe I should have framed it differently. Maybe people don't know yet that they could be interested in open data. But in our work in the municipality of Bad Belzig, we don't use the word open data that much. We approach people with courses. So they come and say, I don't know, the shooting range is one example, but also kind of there's a lot of conventional agriculture out there, so the air quality is not that good. So we started with these Feinstaubsensoren, and then they guess it from that thingy. But I've never experienced that someone came up and said, I want to work with data. We work with courses in our laboratories, and the OK lab kind of address certain issues, and then from there, we kind of have a look if they would like to kind of engage with the data. But most people are just giving their input on their expertise. Most of them don't really engage in the data. We have 2 or 3 data nerds that do that job. So yeah, sorry, that was maybe a bit wrongly framed. They're of course interested in data. They just don't know it.
Everybody agrees, Matteo? Yeah.
Yes, I agree. And to be honest, as emerged also during the 3 talks, it seems exists a big gap between the cities and the province, so and the countryside all over Europe, Italy, Germany, and also this relates to the media illiteracy phenomenon. So in the last year, we witnessed the phenomenon of the fake news. So a lot of people is not really able to understand if the news is true or false. So I think open data and data in general, it's one step more, and we should still reflect on the previous. So moving a step back, understanding how to not educate, because I think it's not about, but at least raise awareness, because young students like my daughter now are educated in the school to these things that probably will be old once they become adult. But the big part of the society that it's made by elder people currently has problem in dealing with smartphones. So we should find ways also to embed these people in the debate and in literacy courses, making them aware at least.
Interesting. Good. Matthias, do you want to add, or should we go to the next question next? Okay, I see. Cool. There is a question from Bailey for all presenters. There's always this kind of question comes always, and the question is going to the direction of software. What type of software would you most recommend for open data mapping and visualization?
Open software.
Open
source software. It doesn't matter which one. One that you have a community that can help you if you have problems, and it doesn't matter which one actually.
Okay. So something in the same direction also of data processing with R and that, or
I love D3.js, and I made my presentation in Observable HQ, and I really like Mike Bostock's work. So I would say Observable is a great starting point because it has a really fast growing community, and there is a lot of snippets you can use, and you are really quick in making a visualization with Observable. But it really doesn't matter. It needs to be reshareable. I think this is
good. I mean, coming to the question of share, because I'm just taking the buzzword, there was a question to Matteo. I'm just jumping there. There was a question, love the idea to always share the own thumbnails over social media and the own experiences. So kind of you always had this, the image, what you share. Why not sharing also a CSV data set narrowed down or kind of the CSV file?
Okay, in these 2 projects, the data are open, are not in the main page, but if you click on the About page, you can download the data set. And just to add one thing more, the original Copernicus data set was only about territory. So the European Data Journalists Network made incredible work in mapping the cities, so the communities on the territory. So now the data set we are sharing is, let's say, as one detail more. And the same for yes, it's only related to Italian cities now, the one about mapping diversity, but in September, we will start a new chapter about new dimension and new city, hopefully in Europe. And again, the data are public.
Cool. Thanks. I have also actually a connecting question, because I'm trying just to connect the questions which are here. Because it's just said before Copernicus, how was your project with Copernicus finance? And all your projects, are they voluntary, free work, kind of hard projects, or is there financing behind? And what kind of?
Okay, it was financed by the European Data Journalists Network, that is financed by a European project. And yes, we were paid for our work. In other cases, like this one, I'm just copying in the chat. It's a work we self-commission. It was born during the first lockdown, because I was personally struggled by the problem of not finding a dashboard about COVID that was working on mobile phone, because the greatest dashboard was the one from John Hopkins, that it's great, but it's not completely usable on smartphones. So we created this very simple dashboard, and we made also the code open source. So you can find the source code on GitHub if you want to reuse it. So we try to deal with self-commission and finance project.
It's hard business.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, there is actually that's kind of closing the brackets, kind of, because we come back to data and visualizations and design. Aaron is asking, what were your experiences? It's actually going to Diana. What were your experiences with visualization of data when it comes to promoting open data projects? Would you need visualizations? Do you use visualizations?
Good question, Aaron. In our projects, we currently don't use any visualizations. We actually, for the Feinstaubs and so on, those sensors that measure air quality, there's already a fantastic website set up by Open Data Community in Stuttgart. The website is, I think, called luftdateninfo.de or something. So we just kind of built the Feinstaub sensor, and then we connected to the website. However, I have the experience not from this project, but from having had discussions. It's sometimes very helpful to have like a very easy data visualization, like a pie chart. I myself, I have troubles to read a really fancy data visualization. I just don't know where to start. My data literacy skills, they are not that good that I could easily pick up the information that are actually transformed. But there's, I don't have anything against easy accessible and understandable pie charts. I just love them. And I think it helps a lot of people who are not data nerds and want to have like an informed information. Just one story. My parents never really understand what open data is. But like 2 years ago, they saw like statistics of how the burglaries in the region of Basel went up. It was like the discussion of the morning for 2 hours, really, because it was really something they could relate to. And yeah, so good visualizations are in order, but make them tangible.
I think you said a nice word, relate to. I think that's what also Matteo has been doing. Kind of when you were selecting your city to see the climate change, that's kind of something you can relate to, so that people can really find the bridge to the data, to have their own. Also, the other word was data storytelling and data story. Yeah, cool. Somebody, I could continue. Matthias, do you have any questions from the audience, or did they ask it even over Slido? Is there something?
No questions in the audience here.
No question.
So far,
Okay.
some of them might have asked over Slido as well. I don't know.
Okay, cool. Good. So we have actually 1 minute left for one last question, and I'm trying to pick an interesting one. No, actually, they're all interesting, not judging. So there is one which is super long. Okay, that's maybe an interesting one. And Diana, but actually I think that's also for everyone. Do you foresee partnerships with government agencies, non-profit legal support groups as useful to making data understandable as well as accessible?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Can you read it again?
Yes, it's a longer one. Do you foresee partnerships? So actually that's the question. Do you foresee partnerships? And then comes the additional part with government agencies as agencies, nonprofit, legal support groups.
Yeah.
And do you foresee partnerships as useful to making data understandable as well as accessible?
Right. Okay. So our project work is totally is 100% funded by federal ministries, and we have a local and regional focus. So it's actually part of our work to reach out to maybe local district data CEOs. What's it called? Well, you know what I mean. So we have to work with them in order to make data more accessible and make it more a common good. We don't really work with NGOs yet because this is always a funding structure thing. Because we haven't really collaborated yet with NGOs but maybe in the future. But yeah, it's very important to actually work together with them to make them also understand what is needed on a local level and how we can transfer or kind of bring the data that is being collected in a rural municipality, bring it onto the next level, because not every town needs to have its own open data board. So we are on discussions, constant discussions. Thanks for the question. Yep.
Cool. Thank you. Is there anything from your side? Closing remarks, questions, anything? Otherwise, I would say time's up. We're done. Anything from your side? All good?
Very good.
Okay. Thanks a lot. So I'm closing now the stream. Thank you, everybody. I see 200 people have been joining. Thanks. See you next time. Closing the stream.
Bye.
So
Bye.
we are